So, it's been a year now since Breonna Taylor has passed away, and that terrible no knock warrant incident on March 13th of 2020. So, over the past year, there have been a number of changes, specifically to policies within LMPD and Metro government. On June 12th, less than a month after protests started, Mayor Greg Fisher signed Breonna's law banning no-knock warrants in Louisville. The city also later established a civilian review board, which 11 people were nominated to be on. On September 15th, the city settled the lawsuit with Breonna Taylor's family for $12 million, which also included police reforms. Yes, we have had some wins, and I always state it like we're asking for a mile, but we have had a couple of inches. Tyra Walker, co chair of the Kentucky Alliance Against Racial and Political Repression, said. So, they haven't done a lot, but there is something. Hopefully, getting rid of these no knock warrants, I mean, they're completely ridiculous. A lot of the times, there's not even enough evidence to really warrant a warrant to be going into these people's houses. And a lot of times as well, it's not even the right place that they're going into. The whole situation, especially with Breonna Taylor, it infuriates me. It infuriates me that they would feel like that somebody has the audacity to defend themselves in the middle of the night from somebody bursting into their homes. There's been even other police chiefs that have been on record saying if somebody's bursting into my home at 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm gonna shoot them and I'm gonna defend myself in my own home. Like, for the reason that they even arrested her boyfriend at the time for shooting back at the police or opening fire on the police. What would you do? It's a no-knock warrant, right? They don't have to announce themselves. They come right into your house. I'd shoot them too if I had a gun. Like, it's a tragedy and a travesty that happened to this poor woman. And for us to not have any kind of change, I feel like they've really given up on trying to make anything better. Trying, like, I feel like they did put a band-aid on this whole situation by putting a couple of things into action, but not making any real significant change in people's lives.
Yeah.
My biggest offense I feel like in this is that this shows that the criminal justice system is been fundamentally broken since the 70s, since Nixon is around the era where no knock warrants started to even occur. And even a knock warrant, which is an announced warrant, is they could literally break down your door within 90 seconds of making their first announcement.
Yeah.
So we're talking about fundamentally, like, a no knock warrant is even worse because they're not even going to announce themselves. So of course your fight or flight is going to go into even further because you don't even think it's the cops at that point. But honestly, um cops or not, you might go into fight or flight anyway, and you might bring out a gun that you legally own, which is what happened, right? um it's an offensive thing already. And I'm not, you know me, I'm not a huge proponent for guns, but if that's what's in your home and you're trying to protect yourself, that is your legal right to. And if you had somebody break into your home and then all of a sudden pull out guns on you, you might react. And I it's unfortunate how bad these warrants are often allocated out by judges, because
Easily.
very easily in a lot of cases.
Yeah. I've
There
done
was
it.
John Oliver, I think. He did a whole thing. He did a whole segment about it once everything came out about Breonna Taylor, about raids and police raids, and how much fault there is on the side of the police officers when they're putting in these raids and they're putting out these warrants to get signed by these judges, and they're talking about how quickly the judges sign it. 60 to 90 seconds they review these even like as low as 30 seconds at some points to review any of these cases before they sign it off and give them the warrant. And there's literally almost nothing, like no real proof behind any of them besides like the suspicion of, oh, well, we smelled the smell of marijuana when we passed by this house, so give us a warrant so we can go break down the door. Come on. Come on. Seriously. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous that we're funding the police in this way to be doing all this stuff. There's no detective work going behind any of this. It's just allegations, allegations for the most part, and this
I mean,
woman's
all you
life
have.
could have been spared.
I don't want to say. All right, I agree with a good percentage of that. I also agree that sometimes there is some sort of investigations and other things going on that kind of like um, started prior to these things happening or whatever it is. It's whether or not they're executing it correctly, meaning they're going to the right locations and so on and so forth. Like there's some justifiable raids because they've did the research and they've gotten the evidence for whatever. So I don't want to say that everything is screwed up. I think a way large of a percentage of it is screwed up though. Like that should have been done correctly. That's what I'm gonna say. Because there's some justifiable, obviously raids, just like everything else. There's always that little percentage of justifiable things. They need to restructure all this stuff and they need retraining or whatever. And they also need to before they actually do it, like double, triple, quadruple check before they actually do something like that. Like I've been in a situation where a house was raided, and luckily the way they handled it, they said do this, do that, and they're very clear with their instructions. They said, if you do this, you're lucky you didn't do that because you could have gotten shot doing, this is what one of the police officers had told me or whatever. And like I said, luckily I didn't. It wasn't a big. It didn't turn into a situation that became a huge thing for me at least. I know other people had other issues in court and whatever down the line or whatever. I don't want to speak too much on it because it's not really my business to speak on. But in regards to the actual raid, I think depending upon the location and area that you live in, the amount of training that they have, how much evidence that they would have to execute the raid or whatever, and whether or not it's justified to do what they do. Um, Sometimes it's called for. But I'm going to tell you one thing: the feeling that I had was shock. When I was in the whole thing, I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know how to react. I didn't know what I would do that could trigger somebody shooting me or doing whatever else. At the time I was, puffing a little butt or whatever it was at the time or whatever, and I wanted to hide it because I was afraid I was going to get some sort of charge, and it's just a weed charge, right? So like, how serious is that, right? That's not a big deal. But my actions of trying to conceal it or doing whatever could have gotten me shot. You know what I mean? And that's what the guy had said. Just put the stuff down, whatever it is. Don't put your hands in certain areas, and that's basically what I did. They arrested us, and then things went through the process or whatever. And like I said, I don't want to get into too much business because it wasn't my house that it happened in or whatever. I was at somebody else's house. Um, but that whole situation was a scary thing. Like you don't know what's gonna happen. You know what I mean? So the boyfriend's reaction, I can kind of see why he would do that if he didn't trust that those were cops coming in. The fact that they went in there guns blazing pretty much and willing to shoot people and do whatever makes absolutely no sense. I don't know what kind of drugs that they assumed was in the house,
But it
but
wasn't
they're
even.
just drugs. It's not that they said that, oh,
It
there's
wasn't
possible
even
guns.
the boyfriend. It was supposedly the boyfriend, her ex boyfriend. So
Her
it
ex
wasn't even the current boyfriend
It
that
was
was in
the
the
ex
house
boyfriend
because they
that,
didn't do any research onto whether the boyfriend was
Hmm.
still staying there or not.
yeah.
They didn't check that out. They weren't doing anything like that. They just heard that he was there. So they went on this hearsay from somebody else that he still lived there, and they busted into this guy's house with his girlfriend. She's sleeping in the bed. She's sleeping.
Who reported it? Did they tell you who reported it?
I don't
Wouldn't
know.
it have
No,
been crazy?
so well, that's not this is a misunderstood part. What happened is that apparently a package had been sent to this person to the wrong address. The cops actually knew already where the other person was and had the warrant already, and then initiated both warrants at the same time.
So
So
they did two raids at the same time. They did one at the
yeah,
with the.
yeah, it's offensive. Like if they should have done their due diligence and checked if the other house was even the correct house at that point, because
No,
it's
that's
very
not the.
clear from the information.
Yeah, and that's not the first time that they've gone into the house of
That's
somebody that
crazy.
wasn't their house. It wasn't the right house. They pulled out a lady naked, butt naked from her house, And she's screaming at them that this isn't the right house. You've got the wrong house. And they didn't want to listen to her.
They had her standing there naked.
They had her butt naked. Yeah, handcuffed, butt naked. And they finally gave her something to cover up. And they told her, "Oh, well, you shouldn't yell. You shouldn't be yelling. You don't need to yell at us." And she's like, "What the hell do you mean I don't need to yell at you? You're in my house. You pulled me out of my house butt naked."
The whole power
It's also 12 in the morning.
It's ridiculous.
It's also 12 in the morning.
It's ridiculous. Like, what?